Hello, in this video I'm going to show you the process that I've been using to replace our old stainless steel sheathed lifelines with Dyneema Lifelines. Now what this is not is a how-to video, because this is the first time I've done this job. What this is I've just done something, I found it really interesting and useful and valid as a solution, and so I want to share the process that I've used, which appears to have gone well. That's how this video is kind of intended, so please take it in that light. Before we begin, I'll just show you the old lifelines. This is what we're replacing. As you can see, very badly damaged and actually quite dangerous really, because if you have to lean on that intentionally or otherwise, then this could give way at any moment really. So this was a job that's been on my to-do list for a while, and I've finally got around to doing it. I'm also going to be fitting lifeline netting here for my daughter, who's 6.5, and yeah, this is the first step before doing that. So to remove the old lifelines, you just have to undo the lock nuts there on the turnbuckle and then turn the turnbuckle so that it releases. Then once you slide off the locking nut from this end, then the lifeline has a small enough diameter to be pulled through the apertures on the stanchions. Now, like anything on boats and in life in general, there are always pros and cons with things. The advantages of Dyneema are it's extremely lightweight. This isn't a racing boat, so it doesn't really matter. I've got about 1,000 kilos of tools on board, I think, so it won't make any difference for me in terms of speed. But just having a 100-meter reel of Dyneema on board, it weighs nothing. It makes no difference having it on board or not, really. So that is an advantage. Imagine having 100 meters of the cable on board. It becomes much less manageable. So that's one advantage. Price-wise, this is good. I got a really good deal on this. I believe it was, you know, like $2 a metre or something like that. So by the time you do the whole boat, you're going to need maybe 45 metres of this and maybe 20 metres of the lashing. So it was really quite cheap compared to the stainless steel sheathed option. It's probably cheaper, I think. I like to do things on my own, you know, without having to rely on others. So that's why I like this. Now, one disadvantage of it is it is vulnerable to chafe. It's extremely strong. This has a braking load of about 3,000 kilos, 6mm, but it is vulnerable to chafe. So what I've been doing is each of the stanchions, top and bottom, I've just been getting some, this is 80 grit sandpaper, and I've just been cleaning out inside to make sure there are no burrs in there at all. And on some of them I have seen burrs, and actually stainless steel wire is not immune to this, so this is a good thing to do regardless of what you're doing. I just cleaned out the holes, and it does make a difference. Afterwards it's nice and smooth, so that's the first thing that I'm doing to mitigate chafe. Now they'd probably be okay like this, but what I'm also going to do, there are different options. Some people put heat shrink on there, that can work, but you have to be very careful because this is vulnerable to heat as well, so if you're heating up the heat shrink, you can be damaging your Dyneema. So that's one thing to be aware of. What I intend to do is get some of the smaller lashing and just whip about a 2-inch section of this and whip around so that it's kind of like a sacrificial whipping on the outside, so that that's chafing against the stanchions and not the load-bearing Dyneema. That's my plan. I'm going to go and clean up all the holes now on this side that I've just removed, and then that will be ready for us to start fitting the new lifeline. I'll just do a quick before and after here. You can see the burr on the edge there. That wouldn't be good for the Dyneema. What I'm looking to end up with is a nice rounded entry point. So I'm not just sanding like that, which would create a kind of sharp edge still. I'm kind of doing this, coming down at an angle. And then if you keep at that for a while, you'll see it does clean up and you get that nice rounded edge. That's this one finished. It's much smoother. If you want to be super professional, I suppose you could go, you know, get a 240 grit, 320 grit, whatever, and keep getting this so it's more smooth, like really shiny. But I think this will be okay. Now we can attach one end of the lifeline to the pulpit. I've just gone through the stainless steel welded on rod there as per the original lifelines. If you wanted it to be stronger, you could go around the railing itself, but I'm not concerned really, because my thought process is that this has a 3,000 kilo braking strain, but a lifeline, what's its job? It's to stop somebody from falling overboard. So let's say you get swept by a huge wave and somebody gets bounced off the lifeline. The maximum load there is probably about 300 kilos, which is a tenth of the breaking load of this. So I'm not concerned about the strength of this or my imperfect splices, because they're still going to be fine. And I'm not worried about reinforcing this too much, because if there's an overload situation, then something is going to give anyway. So if you crash into something with your lifelines, something's going to break, and I'd rather it be this than rip all the stanchions out of the deck, because this is extremely strong stuff. So that's my thought process. It may be incorrect, I don't know, but I'm just talking you through what I'm doing and why. So I'll now go make an eye splice to go through here, and then we can run the line back towards the cockpit. I'm going to show you how I'm splicing this, not because this is a tutorial, because it's not, but I just want you to have kind of an overview of how easy this is, and then if you want to do this yourself, you can go and listen to an expert about it. But I learned this from Herb at the Rigging Doctor on YouTube. They did their own rigging, and that's been going for 9 years now, the Dyneema rigging on their boat. So, you know, I'm happy to listen to him. It's 72 times the diameter, the minimum bury for your eye splice. So I've gone over, that would be 43 centimeters. I've gone to 50 centimeters for ours. So you want 50 centimeters of tail. I want the eye splice to be about that large. So all I've been doing is getting fids. You don't need fids, I've got them on board, but if you don't have them, you could just use a ballpoint pen. Take the ink section out and you could use that, so don't worry if you don't have these. But I've got them, so I might as well use them. So what I want is to open this up. I've been trying to find the middle nice and precisely so that it's even on both sides. So if you just look at the fibres as you're doing that, then you can find the middle. And then you just insert this there. There's a little bit of tape on that from where I cut it before with a sharp blade. And then I've been pulling this through like so. And then the loop size we want, you just open that up a little bit more. And you do the same again, you make another hole through the centre. And then I've been using the method of making this hole nice and large. I've got this other fid, and I just go in through there and make that hole much larger. And then two fids together, you can kind of play about a bit, just make a really large hole. And then now I've got a nice big hole, just get this, pull through like so. And then keep pulling, so that kind of flips over on itself and does a little twist. And then I've been taking the loop, pushing that through that hole. And then that creates a nice locking splice straight away. And then you just need to bury all this tail and taper it. If you don't you don't have to taper, but if you don't taper, then the weak spot comes here, because this is where it goes from a thick double section to a thin section, and it kind of changes the direction of the fibres sharply, so it'll break there. If you taper it, then it gets much stronger. So I'm going to taper about this much of it at the end, but first I'm going to pull, just going to make a hole here and go down the centre of this and pull it through, so that it kind of hides the tail inside itself. And to do that, you just go down the centre, so to bury the tail, I've just added a little bit more tape onto this and tapered it a little bit. You just go through the centre and then you pull through the tail like so. And then you just continue that process, because when you finish with this, you're going to pull the cover back down like that, but you need to cover everything, so you need to keep going. And as Herb said in his video, just imagine a dolphin jumping in and out of the water. If you don't get far enough on one pass, you just continue again, you go back in, and then you do another pass, and you just keep doing that for the length that you require. There we go, that's enough now. And now you want to taper this. So the way that I've been doing that is just pulling out one of these 12 bundles of fibres and snip that off, and then continue up about 3, take another one out, snip that off, and just keep doing that. And then by the time you get to about this distance, you'll only have one left there, and all the others will be trimmed, and it'll be kind of a nice tapered shape. So that's the way I've been doing it. It's been working out okay. So I've tapered that now, just run it through my hand. It gets progressively smaller, which is what I want. And then now you just need to pull this through, and then that disappears. You just keep doing that. You milk the cover down, and you kind of tidy everything up. If you want to minimise the stretch once you've got this in place on the boat, you can tie this to a strong point and put it on a winch and give it a good pull. That will take out the initial stretch from your splice. So, you know, I started doing this yesterday. I'm a complete beginner, but even for someone like me, that's really easy to do, and I find it really satisfying. It's a really enjoyable job. So the way I've been doing this is really convenient because you don't really have any measuring to do, almost none. So all I've been doing is putting this into position on the pulpit. Pull that tight. Then I've been pulling this through like this on the reel, and then threading it through the stanchions all the way back to the cockpit. Then once I've got the final measurement, I know where to cut, I can make a cut and pull back the excess back through. Then I know that the measurements are going to be right every time without me using a tape measure. As I'm pulling this through, I'm doing it slowly because I don't want, if you go really fast, then you could heat up the eye splice that you've just made. But if you do it slowly, then you're not going to do that. Now, I know some people watching might be thinking, see, that's a rubbish material. You're worried about pulling it through on itself and it getting hot and melting. Yeah, every material has its advantages and disadvantages. You know, this, you can do that with it 1,000 times and nothing would happen. If you do that 100 times with a stainless steel lifeline, it would snap through work hardening. So there are pros and cons to all materials. I'm really happy with this. Once I'm getting to the far end here, I'm pulling hard on the lifeline, which we're going to be working on. Suppose I'm stopping about 8 inches here, and I'm going to put a piece of tape on here, which is the centre of the eyelet, the eye, and then I can measure back 50 centimetres, put another piece of tape, and this is where I'm going to make the cut. I can now pull the rest of this back through and back onto the reel, and there's no wastage. So I can now pull the lifeline around here into the cockpit and work on it nice and comfortably here. And the only difference at this end is that I've been fitting the stainless steel thimbles inside the eye, so that when I put the lashing on, it's not creating friction on the inside of the eye splice. So it's the same splice and basically exactly the same procedure. You just add the thimble in there as well, which I'll show you now. So I'm just kind of dry fitting the thimble there, double checking that that's the right place, which it is, so I'm happy. So I'll just remove this again now, and we'll put it back in a moment. And now we're just going to do exactly the same splice as before. You just catch one or two little fibres and it makes it really difficult to pull it through because they're so strong. It's amazing stuff. Okay, so now we just get the loop as before, pull it through the hole. There we go, and this time we just insert the stainless steel thimble at this stage. Now you can get low friction rings for this purpose, and my thinking with that is simply that it's not required really, because again, this is just my beginner perspective, but I'll share my thought process anyway, and feel free to comment if you're an expert. But my feeling with this is that you don't need a low friction ring. If you're going to be doing something with it where you're making a pulley system and you need to have low friction, then yeah, of course you need them. But for this, a little bit of friction is actually my friend, because when I'm using the lashing to tighten up the lifelines, it kind of locks itself as I'm tightening it. It's quite sticky, which is good because it helps me to tension everything with it in place. And these are very cheap. I actually had them on board already, so I didn't need to buy them. It seems to work very nicely so far from my limited experience. So there we are. Now we just I'm going to do the same as before, bury this tail and taper it. I actually find this job really enjoyable and therapeutic. I don't know why. I've loved every minute of doing this. Bit of a difference from sanding the hull, which I've been doing recently. That's enough. Now I'll just taper the end again. I'll do it from the opposite direction this time, just to see which of the two is easier. There we go, and then I'm not going to pre-tension this one, I'm just going to put it on with a lashing onto the push pit and then pull out the stretch. So I have Dyneema for the lashing as well. I believe it's 3mm, this one. Now this end isn't going to be doing any work, so I'm just going to tidy it up by melting a little section of shrink onto it. So that just tidies up the end and stops it from fraying, and it's also useful later because this is a kind of little needle for us to finish our lashing. For myself, I've been using just over 2 meters, and then I'm going to tape this and cut it, and then it's basically an eye splice in the end of this using exactly the same splice. So same procedure. It's just as easy with this. It opens up nicely, so it's really good to work with. I can't believe how user-friendly this stuff is. It's amazing, really. So same as before, 72 times the diameter to bury. I only need a small eye on this. show you what I've been doing with the lashing, bearing in mind that I am not an expert. Let's pull this through on itself. This is a balance, of course, of tension. You can get so much tension on with this that you can loosen the upper and vice versa. So just put the tension on that you require. There we go, that's fine. And then somebody was asking in a comment I saw somewhere about turnbuckles. You don't really need a turnbuckle because, you know, I can hold that tension on. That's very tight. I can hold that tension on there with 2 fingers. It's kind of self-locking. And again, that's why I don't believe a low friction ring is necessary in this application. And then I've just been locking these off, doing a kind of figure of 8 through one side, then the other. That's it, and I'm just going to do 1/2 hitch at the end. I'll just leave that there so the rain drips off. That's it. This will stretch over the next couple of days, and then I can tighten this up a little bit more so it won't be quite as long as this in the end. So here we are, this is the finished product. It's not perfect, but I don't think it has to be really. As I said, we're using approximately 10% of the braking load of this material in the most extreme kind of situation that I can imagine. So I am very happy with this so far. We'll see as years go by how happy I remain. I know that other people have had this for a long time and are happy with it, so I think it'll be okay, but we will see. As I said, I may now get some of that small Dyneema and just whip a 2-inch section here through each of these holes, but time is ticking by and I need to get the hull painted, so I may crack on with that now instead. There we are then. As I said, I've really enjoyed this job. What a beautiful material to work with. This has many applications. I'll show you a quick video of just how strong this stuff is, even the thin stuff under a test load.
1 ton, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. 1.7 ton, 0.9, 2.1 ton, 2.2 ton, 2.3 ton, 2.5 ton, 2.6 ton. Bang!
This has other advantages too. If you're going to use like a winch wire, for example, on a vehicle, snap back on a steel cable is horrific, very dangerous.
If you were that guy in the back that got whipped in the face, you wouldn't even know what actually got you.
So it does have a number of advantages. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll leave a link to the Rigging Doctor's splicing video for these splices where I learnt how to do that, so you can check that out from somebody more experienced than me. And yeah, I hope you found this useful and helpful. I'm making more videos while I'm here, including the experimental anti-fouling, which I'm putting on very shortly. So if you want to see how that goes, make sure you subscribe. And then my wife, my daughter and I, we're going to be doing the French canals down to the Mediterranean from here in Belgium in a couple of months' time, fingers crossed. So join us for that too. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Ciao ciao.